Yeah, the one thing A is going to be a little wary of. I do like this play. I think you can't really commit to using the Hex there. If you do, you're kind of accepting that you will lose to the next large-scale minion that is played. But while this is, kind of it's a very, very scary play. I think it's a good play, but it's a very scary one because we can see that the Moonfire is there. The Moonfire would allow Orange to push this 12 damage through, which I think he's going to go for it. I think he's going to make sure that this damage gets pushed through.
Yeah, I also think that the recognition from A8 is like, okay, I think I can afford to take 12 damage to face here as long as I get to keep the Hex, because most likely after the Saronite is cleared, he can just use the Volcano without a Hex to clear the Tyrantus. It's unlikely that Orange would be able to put probably more than 6 stats of health onto the board this turn. So A8 is conceding his 12 points of life to be able to save this 1 Hex in hand.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy to think about, and it's very dangerous, especially against such a burn-oriented deck, but I really like it from A8. I'm a little surprised to see Orange didn't even commit something like the Spellstone, but looks like he wants to save that just to kind of, keep an answer for Shutterwalk, because later on in the game, if Shutterwalk whiffs, you're going to need an answer for the majority of those minions.
That's right. So A8 now definitely has to Volcano this, and I guess it's followed up with something like a Mind Control tech. There is an argument for Healing Rain just because you won't necessarily have too many answers for the next minion, or I'm not actually sure. It has to be Mind Control tech, right?
Yeah, I definitely think the Mind Control tech is very strong there. You want to get some kind of pressure on the board because Orange is, not at that strong of a life total, and he's had to use these branching paths for draw, so I think A8 has the read that there's no real Ultimate Infestation in the hand. Orange is kind of struggling to amount something together, but A8 does have to be very cautious. He is getting low on life. That Healing Rain will help him out, and he does need to save this Gluttonous Ooze, but if he doesn't pick up, some kind of gas later on, it's going to be pretty bad.
Yeah, that's very true. He'd love to pick up... the other Farsight isn't even good enough here, huh? Also an Acolyte without a trigger. It seems like individual draws won't necessarily be enough for A8 here, so he has to hope to get some good stall with the Hagatha spells. He at least has the Healing Rain and Hex to be able to react to Malygos, but if he doesn't draw into other things soon, then Orange, with the superior amount of card draw, will be able to put out threat after threat to the point that A8 will run out of answers.
So now the crazy question is I think A8 can afford to wait one more turn, but the question is, how threatened does A8 feel of, not being able to get card draw consistently, that he wants to commit the Gluttonous Ooze, even knowing that Twig has not been yet played? There's also some fear in playing the Healing Rain, because Alexstrasza has not been seen yet. And right now, 18 is, a safe enough life total that he doesn't need to commit the Healing Rain in fear of death, and he really doesn't want to commit it until Alexstrasza has been played.
Yeah, you brought up all the relevant points here, and I think the completely safe play is just to pass here, make sure you have the checks for everything that comes out the next turn. I definitely don't like the Healing Rain, just because it's impossible to die from 18 without having seen a Malygos to possibly trigger Floop. So yeah, it's exactly what A is going to do. But Malygos comes off the top now, and Orange does have that Floop in hand, so he has access to deal crazy amounts of damage over the next few turns.
I think Orange is going to have to commit to this Malygos here. He could go for Lich King Hero Power, but the Malygos just seems pretty clean. He doesn't necessarily have to play the Moonfires, but I think the reason he goes for this play is because he wants to make sure that the Forbiddenest Floop is a Malygos, and by getting the Lich King down first, he will guarantee that the next time he plays Malygos, that Floop will remain a Lich King for quite some time.
Right. I also think that this play is baiting either second Volcano or a Hex from A8's hand. So I think Orange is willing to delay the Malygos by one turn to possibly remove some kind of removal from A8 and maybe protect that Malygos on the turn it comes down. So Life Drinker, finally a minion for A8 drawn there, but I think that's Elementary Reaction. It could give him one more draw. And you will still have to Hex this Lich King to deal with it, though. I'm pretty sure Avalanche doesn't freeze the minion in the middle, or the minion that you target with it.
No, I believe it deals 3 and freezes the 2 to the outside. Although I feel like that card does something different every time I play with it, so I'm not quite
Right?
sure.
It is just one of those should belong in arena only cards. But anyway, Orange has seen the Hex, so this might be the turn to play down Malygos. You can also use the Spellstone to clear off the Life Drinker to possibly protect the Malygos.
Yeah, I really like being able to clear off that Life Drinker with the Spellstone, the Malygos. The question is, does Orange feel confident enough? He saw the Hex. He saw it was a little reluctant. I think right now, Orange senses weakness and is going to go in for this play, and I really like it. I would like to see the hold on the Moonfires, however.
I love it. You said he senses weakness, smells weakness like a shark. You got to go for it now. Except it's a goose instead of a shark. The thing is, it's not just second Hex that's scary, but also a second Volcano, even dealing with the Life Drinker. Well, I mean, the thing is, if you don't deal with the Life Drinker, it can still trade into the Malygos anyway after the Acolyte bumps into the Hex, so it's bad to Volcano either way. Although, technically there's 16 health, so it would have to be like Volcano plus something else.
Yeah, it would have to be multiple cards. I do think with second Healing Rain being drawn, that's pretty strong for A8. He can actually commit one of these Healing Rains to survive the onslaught of the damage. He does have Earth Shock for this Malygos. Could opt to try and draw with the Acolyte of Pain as well. This is a very difficult turn that A8's got a couple of decisions to make, and he needs to make sure that he's sequencing in the proper order.
Yeah, the only thing I'm sure of this turn is that the Earth Shock has to come down into the Malygos. He could feel desperate enough that he would play the Ooze to get a better spell to deal with things, but he also has the option to Avalanche on the Hex minion so that he can freeze Malygos. But of course, he's silenced before doing that because of the way freeze and silence works. And Floop, Swipe, Moonfire is just going to do it if he doesn't Healing Rain, right?
Yes, it would. So he's definitely going to need to commit to that Healing Rain. Opts to leave the Acolyte of Pain on the board. I'm a little curious as to why, maybe A8 thinks that he can potentially get more draws out of this if there is no, second Floop or anything like that. So, or second Malygos, I apologize. So it's very interesting to see him not, take that preemptive hit, but there's no real way that Orange can punish the Acolyte of Pain. It might just be more beneficial to push that 2 damage now.
Yeah. So as I can see it, Orange has access to 24 damage this turn to face with Floop, Swipe, Moonfire, and the Hero Power. So there's still 2 ofs of many cards left in Orange's deck and the Alexstrasza. So the awkward thing about going in with the Malygos now, or the Floop rather, is that your Alexstrasza becomes a lot less effective after you draw it. A8, if Orange puts him down to 24, will be able to heal up to around 18 with second Healing Rain. So Alex is just doing 3 damage. But this is just too good to pass up, right? You saw your opponent use a Hex. They had to Earth Shock this Malygos instead of hexing the second one. They had to use 1 Healing Rain. If you're a shark who smells weakness, it's got to be smelling even tastier now.
Yeah, I definitely like this play from Orange, just kind of trying to end this game as quickly as possible. Even if, Healing Rain comes out and there is some kind of answer to this board state, he's still got a lot of gas, and Volcano drawn is a perfect answer right now. Volcano, Healing Rain, can even hold on to that Ooze still for that weapon if he's that worried.
Yeah, Volcano, perfect is exactly the word to describe it, right? Because I was thinking, well, this Hex, you'd want to put it on the bigger minion, but then there's still the threat of the spell damage on the Floop, right? Because of things like Ultimate Infestation. So you would have to have chosen the lesser of 2 evils, but with the draw of Volcano, he's able to clear off both minions and still have the mana to heal up. And now Orange, I think, is going to mostly have to rely on his Hero Power to get work done, but the turn should be starting with a Nourish for draw.
I definitely think so as well. I like to see the Nourish for draw. Just try and find those answers. There's still 2 Ultimate Infestations in the deck, which, although aren't the greatest right now, they will at least deal some kind of damage. I think Orange, doesn't have much to work with left. I believe it's 2 Spreading Plagues, 2 UIs, and Alexstrasza, the second Nourish, and then 2 other cards I'm not quite remembering off the top of my head. So there's not much to work with there, but he's going to need to utilize every card to its maximum potential.
Yeah, it was Howls, Naturalizes, UIs, and Alexstrasza, I think. So it's really not much to get done, but there's no way that he can win this in fatigue against something like Hagatha. So he is just going to try to look for more consecutive threats. At this point, Alexstrasza, just for the 8/8 body, would be a welcome sight.
Yeah, I think so as well. He needs to get something onto the board. He needs to, eventually get there with hero powers. I mean, if he fits enough hero powers in and A8 draws dead for the next couple of turns, that could be all he needs. And that's one dead draw right there. A8 still has to hold on to this Gluttonous Ooze just to be very wary of, any kind of potential out with the weapon.
I mean, it is so tempting to play out the Ooze just to get another spell from the Hagatha, but you're right, because if you leave the Twig as a possibility, suddenly Orange has access to do something like Alexstrasza into Ultimate Infestation, or even UI into the... Is there one remaining swipe, was it? Oh no, both have been used, right?
Both the swipes have been used earlier on because he used one very aggressively to push some damage.
Right. So now, knowing that, it seems like the most burst Orange could do over a full 20 mana Twig turn would be something like 10, right? 10 damage, right, with double UI. But it's not like Orange will ever have the luxury to do that because he would fatigue himself to death. So I think that's the reasoning why AI just rips the Ooze now here, knowing that the Twig is essentially just another 5 points of damage over 5 turns.
That damage does rack up because A8 does not have any more healing rains. A8's really relying on drawing, something here. I almost wouldn't be surprised to see Twig come out, a hero power, and just smack away. I think Orange really needs to push this face damage every single turn. So every turn, that hero power has to be attacked. I think there's no question about that.
Absolutely agree. I think we're just going to see like a Malygos Druid channeling Pirate Warrior here, just ignoring minions and smacking weapons to face. As for taunts for 8, I don't think there's much left either because he played 2 Saronites. There might be the 1 Life Drinker left in terms of heal. So Orange, yeah, this makes sense too. So you delay 1 damage from the Twig to give yourself more turns to survive the Ooze damage.
Yeah, and Orange may be thinking on the lines of, all right, he's got these, random spells off of Hagatha, and something like a Stormbringer or something that copies, those minions is not what Orange wants. There's also Zola still in the deck, so Zola could add generated value, so that's why he went for the Starfall there, just to kind of, mitigate the board state a little bit to make sure that, A8 isn't using the random spells he gets from Shaman to maximum efficiency.
Yeah, and not gonna lie, I had to Google what the Shaman Spellstone did, and I think that A8 might be tempted to play it out here and just summon another copy of this Manatide Totem, rush him toward that Shudderwalk. I don't think he's worried about fatiguing anytime soon because Orange is so many cards deeper into the deck. If he gets Shudderwalk, the game could end very soon anyway, and at the worst case, he could possibly transform those Manatides with Stormbringer in a later turn.
Yeah, I really like the possibility of putting it on. I'm very curious as to why, he didn't. Maybe he's worried a little bit about the Spreading Plague. But if A8 is keeping very good track, I guess that's kind of a weird way to say it. But if he's keeping track of, the cards potentially left for Orange, he's going to know that playing out Shudderwalks is probably just enough. You don't even need to bounce them back. And even if something like Doom Pack comes from the other side, you don't have to worry about really any card Orange has at his disposal besides his hero power.
That is very true. So now Orange with these kind of whiffs of draws, although nothing in the deck is really good anymore. I think it is time to just go for that game time you mentioned, smack away at the face. Maybe at some point, it's just awkward for him that the damage doesn't work out so that he can UI for lethal because it's too far away. It's like 2 more turns to get A8 to 6 without hero powering. So at some point, Orange would have to hero power, and so the UI would be similarly delayed anyway. For A8, I do like just ripping the Shutter Walk, as you mentioned.
Yeah, I think A might be a little bit too worried about, not potentially having the Shutter Walk back, but it's buffed up. You get copies of it because Sarah Knight's been played. You also heal yourself up. You also freeze orange, and I don't think you could want anything more. If you do draw into that Grumble later on, you could just go ahead and get them back. I mean, why not news? Might as well. I really like this from A8, and that's why I'm a bit curious why, he didn't commit to the Spellstone earlier to kind of guarantee the Shutter Walk, because once Shutter Walk was drawn, the game was over.
Yeah. And beyond a Spreading Plague to delay, well, I guess Orange could Doom Pact, but then he kind of locked himself into Fatigue, right?
Yeah, but he was hitting Fatigue no matter what, so I think he's going to go ahead and Ferocious Howl, draw that last card.
Right.
Makes sense. To get that armor, and then go ahead and try and win the game out that way.
So in that case, it's just going to be A8 having to, I mean, at this point, just playing down the Grumble as one minion. On paper, looks like it should be okay, but Orange still has both Naturalized left, which makes it a bit awkward.
I mean, A8 doesn't have, that much to work with left. There's still the second Manatide totem in the deck. I believe there's a Zola as well. So these two minions are quite about all he's really working with. Doesn't want to have to play the Manatide. I mean, however, he can, Stormbringer to transform it into some random legendary. So right now, Orange is going to be working out the math on whether or not he can afford to Alexstrasza himself for that one extra damage, just to keep the 8/8 and keep A8 at one extra damage, or if he has to put A8 to 15 and save the 1 health because of Fatigue, Matt. This is coming down to the wire.
Yeah, I think if Orange has been keeping track of 8 draws and plays so far, and I'm sure he has, I think he knows that he can't afford to play Alexstrasza ever, because it's just going to get eaten by the second Hex. And because Alexstrasza is 9 mana, Orange is essentially just missing 1 turn of hero power, and by doing that...
Looks like 8 is even respecting the Naturalized, because he knows Orange has to commit to it.
Mm-hmm. So after Orange naturalizes, I'd expect to just see hero power, but with Fatigue math, I'm not sure if it's supposed to be for attacking A8 or for healing himself up.
I think it has to be for attacking, because you need to, I mean, I'm trying to wonder if how the semantics work out, but I definitely think it has to be attack on the face. You just get that 3 damage in. You need to keep pushing the agenda. You can always Alexstrasza yourself back up to try and survive 1 more Fatigue.
Yeah, that's very true. Because of Orange being deeper into Fatigue, it does mean that Alexstrasza will potentially have a use as a healing mechanic, whereas the armor is kind of redundant with that. So I see the argument for pushing face with this. And wow, I think A8 needs some insane Hagatha spells, and he still has a couple more minions with it? Or is it just the mana attack? Okay, Glacial Shard and Ziliax to possibly produce 2 more Hagatha spells. 1 healing rain could change everything.
Yeah, I believe the last minions that A8 has access to is Manatide, Zola, Glacial Shard, and this, weird inclusion of the Ziliax.
Yeah. All right, so with Zola, it's essentially 4 playable minions. I don't think he'll want to Manatide unless he can rip another Earth Shock to immediately silence it. So it is just going to be the luck of the Hagatha draw. What's it going to be? Another Stormbringer.
Stormbringer. I do think that A8 needs to Zola this, which is a little scary because it does commit quite a bit into the Spreading Plague. But A8 currently has 2 Lightning Storms, so I don't know if he's that worried about Spreading Plague.
Yeah, I don't think it's a big consideration. I think he's thinking about whether it's worth it to play Ziliax and Zola the Ziliax, because it could possibly get him some healing. But does that give him hand space issues? I don't think he cares about overdrawing Manatide Totem anyway.
No, I don't think he cares too much, but I think he would, with that inclusion of, that new spell. I'm drawing a blank on the name of it. Not quite sure what it is.
Voltaic Burst, something?
Voltaic Burst, thank you. He will have access to just 2 free legendaries in the following turn. So it looks like he goes for the Zola onto the Ziliax, like you were mentioning, and that does heal him up for quite a bit more.
Yeah, and I think Orange is absolutely forced to naturalize this Ziliax if he doesn't want it healing up A8. He knows there's another one in hand, though. And the funny thing is, if he Plagues, that means that the Ziliax, which is in hand, can immediately heal A8 up. So he might not Plague. But then, by doing that, it means that he has to take 8 damage from these minions. Oh man, my head hurts.
Yeah, this is pretty close. I mean, Hero Power for Armor has to happen, and Naturalize also has to happen. I think those are 2 things that are happening every time. The question is, can you really afford to play Spreading Plague, or is it better to take the 8 damage? That way you don't give them 4 health, because they're going to be taking, I believe, 1 damage this turn, and then 2 on the follow-up, and then another 3 being that much in total, and UI is almost there.
Yeah. Although Orange has drawn, what was it, 3 cards in Fatigue already, or 2? So UI would deal quite a lot of face damage, and at best lead to a draw if that were to happen. So, man, it's really confusing.
Yeah, this is absolutely crazy, because A8 has to commit this minion. That way he doesn't, face tank any of the damage.
So it gives him another shot for, Ancestral Spirit. I guess it's not a huge deal. It's not like the Ziliax was going to die anytime soon. But yeah, that is the last minion, so it's the last chance for him to roll into something like Healing Rain. This Bloodlust is looking pretty tasty, actually.
Yeah, the Bloodlust actually allows, more damage to be pushed, which is actually crazy. Because the Spreading Plague wasn't played, I mean, I wonder if Orange was thinking about that on the follow-up. Right now, taking 3 will take 4 on the follow-up. Needs to commit Spreading Plague here. Has to armor up. But is it quite enough?
So from this turn, 8 is taking 4 in Fatigue, was it? Oh, man. Okay, 3. But with the double Lightning Storms, most of the time this should lead to lethal unless Orange is extremely unlucky. And even then, there's the Voltaic Burst to clear off 2 of the Plague minions. So that is just going to be game there. It got pretty close at some point, because if the clear for the Plagues wasn't there, then the Ziliax healing would essentially be cancelled out by the Fatigue, or outpaced by the Fatigue.
That was a pretty insane, just turn of events. I really liked how, aggressive A8 played that. And we were talking about earlier how he didn't actually commit the Spellstone onto the Manatide, which we thought, it seemed like a bit off. But because he did not commit that Spellstone onto the Manatide, he didn't draw an extra card, which would have allowed Orange to get the draw in the very end of the game. So I wonder if A8 was thinking about that and thinking about how this game was going to go to Fatigue.
Yeah, it's very likely, especially not having seen a Naturalize yet at that point. I think it was really heads up from him. And it's like he has those little Chinese production cards showing up for him, but all in his head, right?
Yeah, that's actually he's been the one doing the Chinese production for the number running. They just go over to A8 real quick and they ask him, what's the odds on this one real quick? And he just tells them. He's not even watching the game. He's just like, it's like.
He tells them, "I will
8.
crush you."
Yeah, I love that. I will crush you.
I love that as well. All right, so that is only just the first game out of the way. It was quite a long one. And so A8 still has to win with, let me pull up the deck list real quick. He still got this Even Lock and Taunt Druid, because that hunter was banned away.
Yeah, I think it's going to struggle for both these players is actually their Even Lock, because A8 has a fairly strong lineup against Orange's Even Lock, and even Orange has a fairly decent lineup against A8's Even Lock. So I think that Even Lock is kind of the story of the 4th deck. But here's a little interview and kind of a story of Orange.
The handsome orange is the chosen man on the stage. He has always practiced hard to prove that he is an exceptional player in Hearthstone. In the past few years, he finished first and second many times in various competitions, including the champion of DreamHack twice. This year, he won the champion in 2018 Tidanar Hearthstone Elite Invitational. This time, the sharp and diligent orange is back in Hearthstone China vs Europe Championship again. His arrival will become more ferocious.
I'm orange, and I will show my real skills.
There, you heard it from him first. Orange, I can't think of a tournament he hasn't won, to be honest. You name it, anywhere in the world, at any time, in any year.
I can name one. The World Championship.
Okay, all right. Well, that was a bit of a low blow, Gia. I think maybe this year. Maybe.
Yeah, but for sure, that is definitely the goal for Orange. And every year he's got the results to help him back it up, and he just keeps on the grind trying to make it there. So despite all these accolades, he's still got that, that ferocity with the new arrivals, and he won. Yes, there you go.
The ferocious
anyway, yes, it will enter the hand now since you called it out. No, not quite. But it is going to be this even lock up against the Malygos Druid from Orange. And the first thing I saw was, okay, no Naturalize for the Malygos Druid, but no Giant for A8 either.
Yeah, not quite just yet. And very important there, you saw, there's the ferocious
hound. There you go.
I told you it'd come into hand.
Yeah, of course it came on curve, not on turn 2.
Yeah, exactly. So for Orange, you saw him there swing face. Typically, some of the druids you wouldn't see actually commit to that hero power. The difference in this druid and a druid like Token Druid is that they really need that damage to end the game. So they're a little bit more, I don't want to say careless, but a little bit more, willing to take that risk of accepting that Hooked Reaver is, around the corner. Because in something like Togwaggle Druid, you can't afford for Hooked Reaver to hit the board. In this deck, if they're at 15 life, you're Malygos and 2 Moonfires away from killing them. I know that's not quite there just yet, but it will set up a lethal where they can't really heal out of it. And you really need to kind of push that damage in when you can.
Yeah, for sure. Every little bit of damage matters as Malygos Druid, as compared to Togwaggle, which in most cases the fatigue would stack up over many ranges of health totals. But unfortunately for A8, not even a Twilight Drake available, and I'm sure Orange is happy to see that he doesn't have to worry about a big minion just yet. Branching Paths for draw is looking pretty good right now. Depending on what he gets, he might want to ramp with this Nourish. I would expect that on the following turn.
Yeah, you even see A8 there commit the Sun Fury Protector over the Plated Beetle. The reason A8's doing this is because he wants to make sure the Plated Beetle dies on a turn where he can really utilize that armor later on. If Orange is forced to, say, hero power and the beetle gets cleaned up and the armor gets cleaned up very early on in the game, it doesn't help him as much. And, the Sun Fury, it does have a powerful battle cry, but he has the second one, so he's not really worried about getting rid of it.
Yeah, very true. And Orange, with the first draw pickup being UI, was kind of hesitating on whether he should get another draw for the second effect. I was kind of thinking armor would be kind of decent there because he already has enough cards when played 1 by 1 per turn or 2 on this first turn that he wouldn't overdraw with UI. But I guess he was thinking it's still not enough stuff.
Yeah, I think he was very, conscious of the fact that, he's going to need something like Naturalize, especially before Skulking Geist can come down. We can see that Coin Skulking Geist is in the hand for A8, but Orange is going to want to try and get to that as quickly as possible. Even going to play around the Skulking Geist just by committing it there. Not only that, but if he chooses to do so, he could commit this Arcane Tyrant onto, a pretty weak board state, which will allow him to push some damage through. I really like that recognition from Orange.
Yeah, I definitely like that use of Naturalize there too. I think he also could have a pretty decent read that if A8 had the Mountain Giant there, he would have played it. Although some players prefer to go for Twilight Drake before a Mountain Giant first to try and bait out Naturalize. I am not quite sure what the correct sequencing on that is supposed to be, but A8 is going to waste no time on trying to get rid of that last Naturalize and the Spellstones. And now Orange has yet another piece of ramp to get UI activated next turn.
Yeah, the only issue with UI right now is you would really love to, get that card activated and want to play it as quickly as possible. But right now, you've just got too heavy of a hand. You can't really dump the cards in the hand. Wouldn't be surprised to see maybe Nourish for ramp into a Tyrantus and to hopefully trying to Spreading Plague to make sure that Tyrantus just keeps pushing that damage through, because even Warlock has a pretty rough time answering Tyrantus.
Yes, it is near invincible against this deck, which, of course, most of the time doesn't have room for things like Twisting Nether. The best you could do is over several turns Spellbreaker it and then throw some Spellstones at it, which is not efficient at all.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see the Nourish here for ramp, like we were mentioning. He's definitely going to need to get rid of some cards in the hand, like you were saying. There is some merit for trying to push this damage face, but I definitely like, cleaning up that 2-3, trying to make sure that Tyrantus has nothing contested.
Yeah, I definitely like it. And also, I guess, delays Hooked Reaver a little bit. So now for A8, he could go for this value trade and heal back up the Geist with his Shroom Brewer, although it's always such a delicate dance you have to play with your healing as even lock, especially against a deck like Malagos Druid, where every bit of healing post Alexstrasza is very important, or even after their first few pushes with minions.
Yeah, it's very true, but this is just too strong of a play to kind of give up. You also make sure it, gets out of the range. You get 2 healthy size threats onto the board. And you really need to get rid of some of the cards in your hand as well. And it puts the most power on the board for this turn.
Yeah, and Orange, like you mentioned, no hesitation onto this Tyrantus, stomping onto the board. And A8 cannot quite remove it, but he can at least set up a wall of taunts with these 2 minions. If he really wants to, he could also Spellbreak the Tyrantus so that it can be hit by Spellstones in the future, although that Spellbreaker might be needed for Malagos later on in the game.
Yeah, it's a tough call right now. There's no real clean way to be able to answer it. Could just try and put some taunts in the way in order to just try and, stop the Tyrannus from getting through, because these are, decent-sized minions that Orange would have a typical, hard time to get through if A8 were able to, just go ahead and get that other Sun Fury Protector down onto them.
Yeah, the awkward thing is, even though you'd want to play as many minions as possible to try and chip away at the Tyrantus, the thing is it makes the Plague really good for Orange. Oh, with the draw of Mossy Horror, though, that's not going to be a huge problem for A8. And Tyrantus, as far as I can see it, is not going to get through even with the draw of Swipe.
And it's a little unfortunate. Tyrantus' one job inside of this deck is to push 12 damage face. He doesn't do anything else besides that, so it's a little unfortunate to see the Tyrantus is not getting his job done this game.
Yeah, silenced and trapped behind taunt walls. That is a poor dinosaur right there. But Orange, I think, since he still doesn't want to overdraw with UI without having Malagos in hand, will likely go for a Plague Swipe type of turn and set up so that he won't overdraw if he gets Arcane Tyrant off the UI on the following turn. Unfortunately, you're going to have to concede that the Tyrantus is trading into the Geist this turn. Orange could be hoping that it survives another turn, which is likely with the Plague Walls, but we can see that Mossy Horror is in hand for A8.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is the reason dinosaurs went extinct was because they had to trade.
Yeah, that's no fun, right? Dinosaurs. They lived in a time before trading. This is just not not what they're used to at all. So, well, the awkward thing for A8 is that if he plays the Mossy Horror, he actually doesn't have enough mana to play the Spellstone and clear the Tyrantus.
Yeah, it's actually a bit unfortunate that, A8 actually doesn't have a strong answer for this Tyrannus, and not having the Sun Fury that he played earlier on, where he still has this Beetle in the hand. I was talking about how, I thought it was, a good take. right now this Tyrannus is presenting such a large threat.
Yeah, and wow, what's he going for here? Actually going to Hellfire Spellstone, throwing away his own board just to make sure that he doesn't take the 12 damage. It's a good spot from A8 there. I was looking at maybe an option of setting up a taunt with Lich King, but then it's weak to naturalize. It's so weak, you could just die on the spot there.
Yes.
So, really good spot from A8 there. And now Orange, I think he has the liberty to UI now. Most of the time he'll get like a Arcane Tyrant, right? Or it's unlikely that you overdraw exactly Malagos.
Yeah, and even if he's that worried, he could commit one of the Moonfires just to kind of guarantee that he doesn't discard it or just see kind of what he's drawn. I definitely think Ultimate Infestation is the play here. A8 right now is just trying to live to that Gul'dan because as soon as he plays Gul'dan, you know, he's in the driver's seat at this point because there's not really much that Orange can really do. I mean, Gul'dan just turn after turn if he can get those hero powers in. It looks like Orange is going
UI's his own minion to play around the Hooked Reaver.
But
that's fancy.
But okay, he could have just Ultimate Infestation the face and not attacked. It would have set up for A8 to be able to life tap and play Hooked Reaver. I'm not quite sure how I feel about that. It's just very funny to see. It could be correct. It very much could be. I don't know about that one. I saw 5 damage going face. If you were really worried about Hooked Reaver, you could just not swing with the 1/2.
Yeah, it's really tempting to push its face, especially since you have Malagos. But I think Orange was thinking, right, like, okay, I just saw a Spellstone from my opponent who had a really hard time clearing up Tyrantus. It's reasonable that the Ghoul would have a difficult time being cleared too. And if A8 doesn't play a taunt, maybe this Ghoul can push face and make up for the damage you lost with UI not going face. But unfortunately for Orange, there is a Lich King for A8 and no Naturalize for him. So it's quite awkward here. There's even the temptation of just playing straight up Malagos since you have Floop in hand. But there's no swipe to consolidate the damage. Just the 2 Moonfires will be 12, and it's not quite enough to get there.
Yeah, I'm just still trying to think on that Ultimate Infestation play. I guess the one thing I'm thinking of right now is that Orange was worried about double Hooked Reaver. I don't think it was necessarily one Hooked Reaver that he was worried about. I think it had to have been double Hooked Reaver. Because one Hooked Reaver is pretty manageable, especially because there is still there's no more Naturalizes because of the Skulking Geist. But I think one Hooked Reaver is pretty manageable. I'm just a little, still thinking about that play.
I totally forgot about the Skulking Geist. Good catch there. But I am pretty impressed with this play too. Of course, Orange, knowing that the Spellbreaker has been used, figures out, all right, on a clear board, I can just put down the Malagos. I think the only big punish would be something like a Doom Pack off of that one Lich King card, which is not very likely. A fully upgraded second Spellstone plus Death Coil would also be able to deal with Malagos, but most of the time it just won't be enough. So this Malagos is actually going to go uncontested, and as far as we can see it, Floop could very likely come down next turn and make this Moonfire deal 11.
Yeah, I definitely think A8 is very wary of Moonfire being in the hand. Looks like he's just going to go ahead and try and taunt up before he gets that Gul'dan online. Wants to make sure that these Hooked Reavers are in the pool, but it's not looking too good for A8 right now. This Malagos is sticking around, does have a bit of damage. Is actually 4 damage off of lethal right now, just because he can't Ultimate Infestation and commit the Moonfire. I wonder if not pushing that UI face earlier could have been part of the reason. Is there still a swipe left? I believe there might be.
Yes, there is one left. So Orange actually has 3. Okay, 20%. To get it, apparently. So there's 5 cards left in deck, was it? Okay, well, he's just going to start with the Wild Growth. It makes sense because you can still fit in the Branching Paths. And oh my gosh, that is just it.
Don't think that Beetle's going to be able to heal enough. That is just way too much damage coming out from Orange. And, that Ultimate Infestation play was very interesting, but it ended up working out. The Hooked Reavers didn't come down. He didn't have to worry about that pressure, and he ends up winning the game.
That was insane. I'm still trying to wrap my mind around that. I noticed from you, Jace, that your tone visibly, or rather audibly, changed after that UI turn for the rest of the game, and for good reason. It's just something that seems so counterintuitive to not push that damage to AA8 space, and not only that, but clear off your own minion. But Orange decided to respect the double Hooked Reavers, especially knowing that both his naturalizes were gone. And it's hard to say whether or not it was right most of the time, but in this game, it definitely worked out.
Yeah, it worked out in the end. I think Orange, I guess I can't question him too much. He obviously is very proficient with the deck, so there is something that he was thinking of there with that current play. So, I mean, obviously, I'm a little baffled by it still, and maybe I'll go back and talk to him about it and ask him, what's going through your brain right now?
Yeah, that's pretty cool that you're tight with Orange like that. I mean, I guess most casters would be able to. And I just think that in Hearthstone, it's just a really cool thing that people are so willing to go back and review things. We see a lot of streamers putting out content there, which is just review streams or commenting on other people's games or putting on show matches. And even though it's really tough to come up with solid stats for the correct play in any situation, we can at least get a community verdict.
Yeah, it's also just, interesting to hear what these different thoughts are from these players and what they were going through in their mind, because obviously players make specific plays, even if they do seem very strange and very weird, for a reason. It's not like they're just kind of, mindlessly playing these cards. Orange was obviously thinking of something when he made that play. Whether it's correct or not is another debatable story, but he definitely had some thought process when making that play. It ended up working out for him. I was a little worried about Orange because he had this Malagos Druid into A8's lineup, which, would have struggled against the Druid for sure, but he does get the win through on that even Warlock, and now I think it's going to be a battle of who can slide whose even Warlock through.
Yeah, very much, and the remaining decks, it seems like, are, for Orange, his own Shudderwalk Shaman and even Lock. So it is just going to be the Taunt Druid for A8, though, and this is the deck that he had a little bit of trouble with on day one. I'm hoping to see a bit more clean play this time.
Yeah, I saw A8's, presence on social media where he was discussing how he wasn't, the happiest with his plays. I do think Taunt Druid it's becoming more popular. It's a deck that we haven't seen quite a bit. And I think it's one of those decks that maybe a lot of these players, since they haven't played it in quite some time, they may be a little bit rusty with it because it's been replaced by a lot of the, more efficient, I'd say, Druids.
That's very true. And Orange going for the Glacial Shard on 1, showing that he intends to be the aggressor in this matchup. It makes quite a bit of sense. I think a lot of people say this matchup is around 50-50 because sometimes it does just straight up come down to a 50-50 of whether the Witching Hour is able to revive Hadronox or a hexed minion. If Hadronox itself is hexed, that's a big problem.
Yeah, and sometimes you got to be very careful, especially with Master Oakheart. You have to be careful not to commit it when you know that your opponent still has access to Hex, because it can pull out that Hadronox just free and clean on the board. You saw Orange there go for the Coin of Mana Tide, recognizing that there's not too many great ways on turn 3 that A8 could answer it. He would need to have the Spellstone, and if he has a Spellstone, he's not using it on something to try and push through damage later on in the game. And getting the Mana Tide down as quickly as possible is pretty important.
All right, and lucky for Orange, he managed to top deck the second one, which is very unlikely to be answered now that he's seen the first Spellstone. And as we mentioned a while ago, you don't just want to play down Oakheart on 9 every single time just because of that risk of Hadronox. Very much this is a matchup where you intend to save Naturalize for the same turn as you play the Hadronox to ensure that you have that one beast in the pool aside from whatever gets hexed. But once in a while, sometimes you don't even need the full Hadronox value with the cubes and how many taunt boards of Revival, because the minions are so big in this deck. Like they're resistant to Volcano, and sometimes you just need to stick that one big board and go for the win with Branching Paths. But A8 has drawn both his Dragon Hatchers, so that actually just removes Oakheart as a good option altogether.
Yeah, not only both the Dragon Hatchers, but he's starting to assemble the dragons that come off of Dragon Hatcher. This is not looking too great for A8 right now, even drawing onto that Ironwood Golem. I don't think he necessarily needs to commit to the Wild Growth this turn. It doesn't really change up his plays. I think he'd rather kind of soak up some of the damage with that Ironwood Golem, because Wild Growth, it can be played next turn in order to try and get out that it's very awkward, actually, because Wild Growth doesn't really lead to anything.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe even just play the cube here, because next time you can play 4 mana and Wild Growth into the Primordial Drake, but it's really not great. You're essentially playing Ramp Druid of the olden days, not Big Druid, and it's just looking pretty rough here. This is looking like the anti-Exodia hand. When you're playing Taunt Druid, you just draw all the dragons and all the Dragon Hatchers.
And if I'm looking at A8's list, there are 4 copies of dragons that he can pull out. So if he draws onto the second Primordial Drake and the second Sleepy Dragon, that Dragon Hatcher is a 9-mana 2/4. I mean, a lot of times it's still a 9-mana 2/4. Actually, all the times it is a 9-mana 2/4. But this time it will be a very special 9-mana 2/4.
Yeah, special. Let's call it that, huh? Okay, there is a welcome draw for A8 with the Nourish and Wild Growth triple ramp, rather. He'll be able to play Dragon Hatcher next turn, or even just with the Nourish, but I don't see why you wouldn't just Wild Growth as well. Maybe you save it for the draw?
I think you're never going to have access to trying to draw it out. The question is, what does Wild Growth lead up to on the next turn? Being on 6 mana, you would be able to play the Primordial Drake. So I think you want to soak up a bit of damage with this Ironwood Golem. So although you're not ramping with it, you do save it for draw later. I don't think that draw is going to come anytime soon, but it's very important to, kind of hold on to it.
That's very interesting to me. I was looking at the Nourish and then immediately play Dragon Hatcher, but the way A8 has ordered it this way, he's actually going to delay the Dragon Hatcher by 1 turn to make sure that maybe in the future he can draw with the Nourish instead of the Wild Growth. And that, to me, it makes sense, because you're not necessarily worried about drawing those exactly the last 2 dragons in the turns that you delay the Dragon Hatcher. So this is giving him more refill in the long term, and he does have the curve to support it.
Yeah, I think he also has to, try and not take too much damage here. If he takes a lot of damage, it could just be the fact that Orange ends the game by just playing out 1 Shutterwalk that has 2 Life Drinkers in the pool, and A8's already used a Branching Path, so he doesn't have that much more armor gain outside of Oaken Summons, which is basically a pretty dead card right now.
Yeah, I have to agree. Sometimes I forget about how insane Keleseth can be, even in the decks where it's included as an afterthought, like Shutterwalk and Death Rattle Hunter. Sometimes it just allows them to pull out a win condition that it never intended originally.
Yeah, look at this. Orange even using that Earthshock just to push some damage and clear up that cube. I think he knows that the only potential real play from A8's side is that Primordial Drake, and if Primordial Drake comes down, he could just go ahead and hex it and keep rolling, keep pushing that damage. And I really like that from Orange, just being very aggressive right now, because I think that's how he sees he ends the game.
Yeah, it's looking pretty plausible that he can do it. Feasibly, A8 will just go for this Primordial Drake this turn, which will not really clear any minions, but what other choice does he have, right? And it's just going to get hexed, and with Lightning Storm, quite a lot can be happening.
Oh, and Mind Control Tech's going to be better for the future. Yeah, I would not be surprised to see Hex come out here, take the trade, push the 3 damage face. Although Hex is very strong later on, you're still drawing 2 cards a turn, and you will have that MC Tech later on. There is some merit for tempoing out the Electra Storm Surge or using the Farsight to draw twice. I think you'd rather try and save the Electra Storm Surge with the Farsight just to keep drawing through the deck. But I really think Orange is going to Hex here because he's been playing so aggressively.
You can go for the Electra double Hex. 500 IQ play. Unfortunately, that doesn't doubly dilute the Hadronox pool. But if you were to do that, it's just because Electra is another minion on the body. And at this case, it seems like it won't necessarily do that much more than a mind control tech. Well, of course, they have the same stats, but it seems like the battle cry from the mind control tech could be more valuable for saving later on than Electra. So, oh, he's actually going to Healing Rain to protect his board. Okay.
I like this play as well. Yeah. It just, protects the board state, keeps this Mana Tide alive. It would have to force out, say, another Primordial Drake, and that wouldn't even be able to clear up the Mana Tide. So I like Orange's recognition here, making very aggressive plays, even with his healing. I really like that play.
Yeah, I like it a lot too. And if you're expecting a Dragon Hatcher, it's not like you're scared of a second Primordial Drake coming down with the Battle Cry to clear off the Sandbinder.
So now Orange has a difficult decision ahead of him. He used the first Hex very aggressively, but does he want to use yet another Hex as aggressively? We can see that, Dragon Hatchers, if A8 were to draw the other Sleepy Dragon, really do nothing. But Orange is still thinking that 2 Sleepy Dragons are still left in the deck. Curious to see what he decides to go for here.
Yeah, he could completely do a 180 and then just try and Volcano this board. Maybe Electra Double Storm. So if he gets at least one good roll onto the Primordial Drake, he can only trade 1 minion to clear it off. He's actually going to try and roll for Spell Power too. Which,
when he hits
my
it.
gosh.
If he has the possibility.
4s. Yeah, to even push 6 to face, which would be absolutely devastating.
That's
one of them.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's about the average outcome. Actually, not even. Average outcome is you don't roll the spell totem. So, well. But it would have worked out the same way. I think you would have still had to trade 1 minion. So this is just going to pull out the last dragon in the deck. And now, the Hex still looks so tempting, but because Orange doesn't have the rest of the damage to get there, he has to respect the possibility of something like Hadronox and Naturalize coming out. But then again, since he hexed one of the taunts, I guess the taunt pool isn't that huge.
The taunt pool right now is only a 3/6 and a 4/8, and then MC Text would be enabled on the other side. So I really like this aggressive Hex here. I think Orange is on the game plan of trying to end this game quickly. You could even be very risky and push 4 damage here. I think you would rather clean up the Dragon Hatcher, but I like how aggressive Orange has been playing this entire game.
Yeah, it's quite interesting to me. So in the taunt pool also are 2 frogs, and there's Oakheart. Possibly, it's like a 50-50 to get the other Ironwood or Hadronox now. Of course, it's not going to pull anything in the 2-attack slot. But with A8 having seen both of the hexes gone, I wonder if he just has to go for it. It's so scary, though. He's at 12. Orange is presenting 7 on board.
Yeah, you do pull out the 1/5. There is also that minion in the pool as well. You don't pull out a 2/4. It does pseudo play around MC Tech because 3 minions will hit the board. I think you have to go for it here because it does soak up a bit of damage.
Oh, there you go. That's not a Hadronox, though, and quite unlucky for A8 there.
So now the question is, how does Orange navigate these next couple of turns? Could try and, clear off some of these minions, maybe play a chain gang, start to get the grumble action going. I think Orange is in the driver's seat right now. He just has to make sure he doesn't, make too risky of plays.
Yeah, he definitely is. With the chain gangs, I wonder if he's just going to start tempoing out oozes and things. Maybe, can you afford to just throw away 1 mind control tech? If he's not planning to do that and instead play ooze, I don't know if Acolyte is going to fill in that last 3 mana, or maybe the Farsight.
I kind of like to start with the Farsight.
Yeah. I'm just pretty sure he shouldn't Volcano because he has been on this aggressive game plan this whole time.
No, I don't think there's any reason to Volcano. And he knows that it would have to be some kind of Naturalize plus Hadronox play, which would require, both in hand, and it doesn't even really give anything that strong back. It looks like Orange is going to go ahead and commit one of the Volcanoes.
Okay. So
I don't mind this either.
Yeah. I guess the biggest punishes for this would be Lich King and Sleepy Dragon. Technically, it does reset the board in Orange's favor, but we can see that A8 does have that Sleepy Dragon. And having seen both Hex, I'm thinking it's looking pretty juicy here.
Yeah, A8 is really struggling right here. I mean, A8 might just have to go for some crazy play where he just tries to burn the Shutterwalk and take Orange to fatigue, recognizing that Orange doesn't really have, much that he's working with. But Orange does have a bit of pressure in both Mind Control Techs, that Ooze, and that Grumble just being a large minion.
Yeah. So, as you said, he can go for one overdraw this turn with a Naturalize, but naturalizing a 3/4 doesn't ever feel so good. In A8's shoes, I would probably just play the Sleepy Dragon, call it a day, hope it survives a turn, then nourish into something better.
I think so as well. There is some thought for that Naturalize, as you really want to, try and get rid of that Shutterwalk, but as we see, it wouldn't have mattered.
Yep. And Orange has access to Grumble and play down more Saronite.
Definitely like this one to increase the odds of that Shutterwalk, maximizing its potential there.
Yeah, it works out perfectly with the mana and the card space too. So I think A8 knows that the writing is on the wall.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what, A8 can really do here. He could, swipe off one of the 2/3, Spellstone another, Naturalize the Grumble, and then he's, not left with much left he can do besides taking a value trade, which, probably has to be the play here, as, it's kind of bad as it is, but it looks like A8's going to go for something different, wants to go ahead and try and draw.
I think he's just digging for that Hadronox and hoping that Orange doesn't have the Shutterwalk yet. Maybe A8 in his mind is thinking he has a bit more time to stall. We see that it's most likely not the case with all these Saronites. It's very unlikely that the Shutterwalk is going to whiff.
So I think for A8 here, he wants to go for the Naturalize, and I think he actually wants to consider not swinging in with the Sleepy Dragon. I know it's crazy, but the one thing you have to be conscious of is no, it doesn't matter, because they're gonna trade the Chain Gangs off anyways. I was thinking maybe you don't potentially trade, but it really doesn't matter at this point, because if Orange wants to play the Shutterwalk, he can get it down.
That's very true, even with the possible hand space issues. So now A8 is just going to be on a prayer that the Shutterwalk somehow whiffs. It's so unlikely, though. And there you go. That looks like it is just going to be the game sooner or later.
Not quite. That was a big mistake.
Wait,
that
what?
was a massive mistake, because the Sandbinder was in the pool. It drew it
right.
first.
Oh my god.
I was a little curious.
Crap.
I was curious why he didn't play out minions first. Like, there was no reason to Shutterwalk there. He's not worried about anything, because worst case scenario, he plays the Life Drinker, he plays the Gluttonous Ooze, and he plays an MC Tech, and then he has MC Tech and Glacial Shards in the pool for the following turn. That was a huge blunder on Orange's part.
Yeah, I think, just like I did, he just completely forgot that Sandbinder and an Elemental was still left in the deck, and Sandbinder was in the pool, rather. I think he was thinking that, well, all I need is just one hand space to return at least one Shutterwalk, but because the draw went off before the Grumble, the whole combo is ruined now, and A8 has the ability to simply swipe and Spellstone away the Shutterwalk and shut down Orange's direct win condition, at the very least.
I mean, honestly, if you're A8 here, you can just heal up and kill off the Shutterwalk with the swipe and the Spellstone. Like, I don't even think A8 needed to draw there. Like, what is A8 worried about drawing into? I guess he wants to draw the Shutterwalk. But right now, he doesn't even need to try and play the Hadronox. He could just let Orange die in fatigue. If he's keeping track, he knows that Orange only has 2 MC Techs, the Gluttonous Ooze, and the Life Drinker for threats. It's a massive mistake from Orange here in a game that I think he just had guaranteed won.
Yeah, I cannot disagree in the slightest. That was a huge blunder, and now Orange has to rely on some kind of Hagatha spells to do this for him, but with only 4 minions and 4 playable ones, because you never want to play out the Acolyte at this point, it's so unlikely. He might even just be forced to Volcano this board as it stands here, because he doesn't have an answer for Lich King otherwise. Oh my god. I'm pretty speechless here, Jace. I can't even imagine how tilting this would be for Orange.
I mean, Orange is not really the player to make these kinds of mistakes. It's absolutely insane to think about. I mean, I've seen this happen to the best of players, though. That's it's a side effect of, playing that Sandbinder, because you completely neglect to remember that those little things could happen. I believe I've seen, it happen to other players in other large-scale events. So, I mean, it's something you just have to remember. If you're bringing this deck for a reason, you have to just always be conscious of what is left in the deck. That's very important, and Orange it slipped out of his fingers. Yeah,
and you can see, even though the expressions on both these players are quite straight-faced, their stances say a little something. Like, 8 is now hunched forward and fully focused. He knows he's won. He just has to get that little last stretch through. And Orange, man, I think I watched a TED Talk at some point that talked about body language and things like touching your face really talks about, or really signals nerves or anxiety. And just like that, with the naturalized A8 has run away with this game, and Orange knows it's for no reason but his own mistake.
Yeah, I can only imagine how Orange is feeling, because I was terrified for Orange there. My body language says that I'm scared. Nobody could see me right now, but I am just, like you said, I'm just hands and head, like what just happened there. It's absolutely insane. I think Orange needs to, take a second, take some deep breaths, realize, mistakes happen to everyone, and just try and get through the next game.
Yeah, it is one of the toughest things to do, but it is a reality that you need to be familiar with if you're a pro player, because playing on a stage like this especially, and I gotta say that the scene in China has a lot of followers just by the scale of this production. I'm sure everybody watching in chat can tell that there's a bunch of people watching in the audience as well, and Orange has a following in the scene, maybe not as big as Kalento's, but he definitely has fans watching as well. So it's so hard to, kind of brush that off and keep going.
I would hate to think that the reason I did not get an Aston Martin is because of that damn Glacial Shard.
Oh my god.
That damn Glacial Shard in my deck was the reason I didn't get an Aston Martin. I would...
It just froze not only your opponent's face, but your bank account too. Oh my god, this is so sad.
this is that Glacial Shard. That's what you did. That's not mine anymore, right there. Glacial Shard. That is absolutely crazy. And A8 is just. I can see that grin, A8. I know what you're thinking right now. You're thinking you. Yeah. You're thinking you.
We see you. We see you, man.
Oh gosh. I mean, I love Orange to death, and mistakes happen to everybody. I mean, you get really nervous up on that stage. I completely understand where he's at right now. It's not something he probably just completely forgot about. Sandbiter's battle cry and the last Glacial Shard being in the deck. So it happens to the best of us. You can very critical in the moment, but I'm sure Orange can recompose himself and get through it, because he obviously is still a very strong player.
Yeah, 100%. Nobody doubts Orange's skills. It's just that, once in a while the nerves or maybe too much excitement gets to you, and we saw it happen to 8 yesterday, and today he's been much more on point. So, still some more games for Orange to redeem himself, and it is going to be this even lock mirror. Orange is on the coin with double Drake but no Giant.
Yeah, has the double Drake, does have access to that Doomsayer, but it all depends on what A8's list is running. The Doomsayer is very strong if A8 himself does not have Doomsayers being on the coin. But if A8 does actually have Doomsayers inside of his list, then sometimes it gets to this awkward state where A8 is going to be able to play out the Doomsayers first to kind of stop that Giant. So I think with Orange keeping the Doomsayers, that would signal to me that A8 does not have Doomsayers, which he does not.
Yeah,
That's a very good
clear
game,
read.
Orange.
I'm just gonna believe that your logic was completely free of looking at the deck list and just be impressed with you. But yeah, you're totally right. Orange has the one of Doomsayer and A8 has none. I'm actually a fan of keeping Doomsayer when going first in the mirror because if you think your opponent has Giant and they're second, you're actually going to be able to play the Doomsayer going into their Giant turn and then play your Giant because you blocked theirs. But the way it works out, the player going first does not even have access to Doomsayer, so A8's going to be pretty much on the back foot for this entire match because the first person to play the Giant is able to dictate the flow of the game. And one thing I've seen a lot of players do in the mirror is actually just hold off on going face until you're lethal, because one of the best ways to swing in the mirror is actually to play the hooked reavers, which are essentially a third and fourth Giant when they are buffed.
Yeah, the hooked reavers are pretty powerful, and Orange, although the Giant, you don't really want to trade into the other Giant, he can potentially play the Twilight Drake and take a value trade onto the Acidic Swamp Ooze, and if he does so, he kind of gets 2 cards for 1 with his Giant. It's not that weak to really anything because the Twilight Drake will be a 4/10, which means that A8 cannot answer it with his own Giant, and it kind of forces A8 to either take a suboptimal trade into Orange's Giant or push it face, which means that, Orange then kind of, wins that battle of being able to play the hooked reavers first for 7/7s.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. The 4/10 stat line is especially powerful because the Giant can't just hit in and A8 can't play Defile. He also hasn't played anything to possibly upgrade a Spellstone, so it's not like 5 health on the Giant is vulnerable to spell-based removal either. So A8 already in quite an awkward spot here.
Yeah, A8's in a little bit of an awkward spot. The Vocal Homunculus typically isn't that bad because it will block typically the Giant when you're, doing this battle of Giants. But with the Twilight Drake on board, that Vocal Homunculus is just going to get 8 right up.
Yeah, very true. Usually the Homunculus is quite convenient to soak up 1 damage or 1 attack from the Giant, but the Twilight Drake has the perfect stat line to just be on removal duty while this Giant is threatening to push face. And that's already 12 damage from Orange, and A8 does 122. So technically, with the more taps A8 does, if he doesn't take this bad trade into the Giant, he could be scared of just double Hellfire.
Yeah, you gotta be very conscious of that. He could try and realize that he's behind and try and take a very aggressive stance where he just, pushes the damage face and forces Orange to make a very reactive play. I wouldn't be surprised to see that either. I do like fitting in life taps as much as possible because it does get you closer to a lot of your combinations of cards, and looks like he's just going to go ahead and respect it and take that trade.
So A8 does lose that first battle of Giants here, and Orange has the advantage, not just with the health total, but having the second Twilight Drake available to him.
Yeah, I have both Twilight Drakes right now, although it is pretty weak to Spellbreaker that we can see. Both Twilight Drakes in the starter is pretty strong. I think the only thing you'd really prefer to that would be something like the Giant. And currently, I wouldn't be surprised to see A just go ahead and commit that Spellbreaker, clean up that minion as quickly as possible. And, can also commit the Defile, push a little bit of more damage onto that Drake. This does get very punished by something like a Shroom Brewer, however.
Yeah, aside from Shroom Brewer, though, and possibly a Defile, I feel like that was the best thing A8 could have done there. He is getting very close to being able to play out his Hooked Reaver between next turn, a tap, and this Dread Infernal. The Hooked Reavers will be active on the next turn, although I guess you wouldn't even necessarily have to tap because the Twilight Drake from Orange could, in many cases, go face here. But Orange, again, has to respect the double Hooked Reavers, so maybe he won't attack.
Yeah, it's something to consider. Right now, he doesn't have the greatest answer for Hooked Reaver. He could go for a potential swing and then play the Doomsayer after tapping. And what this allows is it stops the Hooked Reaver from coming out. He can then go coin Lich King, and he'll have just a massive minion on board, while also, you know, being able to kind of cheat through that Hooked Reaver with a Hellfire and a Spellstone, basically putting A8 to 1 life.
I definitely like that spot there. Doomsayer here is the second best timing you could get for it in the entire game. The first best, of course, being to prevent Mountain Giants in the early game. But yeah, now this puts A8 in a really awkward spot where he wants to be tapping to keep cycling through his deck, but maybe not, because he has almost everything he needs: double Hooked Reavers, Lich King, and Gul'dan. It's a very strong curve for the next or for the late game. So he might just pass over playing Beetle and tapping.
Yeah, he may try and commit to the Beetle, recognizing what Orange is trying to do here. I think Orange's play is very strong. However, we can see that right now A8 has access to not 1 but 2 Hooked Reavers, which is going to put a stop to the Lich King pushing any damage face and trying to end the game as quickly as possible. Or if, you know, Orange decides to just try and play out that Skulking Geist, that would be another one that it would just kind of stop in its tracks right there. Typically this play would be very strong against, you know, 1 Hooked Reaver, but 2 in the hand is really good for A8 right now.
Yeah. 2 is indeed better than 1, as I've heard in many songs throughout my lifetime. So 8 is actually just going to throw away that Dread Infernal, which to me seemed like not an obvious play at all. But I suppose with the way his hand is going to pan out, I don't see when the Infernal is going to be played anytime soon, right? It's looking like double Hooked Reavers into either Bone Marrow, Lich King, and then Gul'dan. And by the time you play Gul'dan, if your Dread Infernal is dead, it can revive the Dread Infernal. So it's actually really good insight, or foresight rather, from A8 to make that play.
Yeah, I really liked playing the Infernal there just to get it out, because he knows he wants to play Gul'dan as quickly as possible, and his next turn is very dedicated to playing Double Hooked Reaver. I do think Orange rushed this turn a bit. I think the initial play was trying to get this Lich King down because it was the 8-drop. I wish Orange would have looked at playing the Giant plus the Hooked Reaver last turn. If he does that, he can go Hellfire Spellstone and push the Giant face and be able to clean up both of these Hooked Reavers. Now he kind of, you know, just missed just a very potentially strong play there that would have been basically game ending, and now it's going to be a bit of a closer race. I would have liked Orange to think a little bit more about his turn. I think he's a little flustered at that last game still.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. Still, Orange has quite a powerful turn of trading in the Lich King and then healing it up with this Shroom Brewer so that it takes not 1 but 2 Hellfires to deal with it. And that would be taking up A8's entire turn if he wanted to commit to that. So A8 really needs a Spellstone the way I see it here.
Yeah, A8's going to need something here. Could do double Hellfire trade. That is a potential line of play, but that's pretty risky right now. I mean, you can't really do much else besides that. I guess maybe Lich King of your own just to try and put something in the way, but then if they have Spellbreaker, that's basically game ending at that point. I mean, double Hellfire, you do take a lot of damage in the process, and maybe you just kind of hope that you can live to that Gul'dan for 1 more turn.
Yeah, technically Orange would not be able to kill A8 on a clear board, except if he got like the best death coil off the Lich King with Hellfire and something, I suppose. It's unlikely though, so A8's just gonna go for the safe play to try and live until Gul'dan turn. Anything else, like his own Lich King or Bone Marrow, was also quite scary since Black Knight has not been played for Orange yet, and it is in the list. So it's a very tense game.
Yeah, it's very tense. I mean, Orange did have access to 2 of those Death Knight cards, so A8 is playing with a lot of fire here, but I think that's the only winning line of play that A8 can take here, especially because he's been setting up for this Gul'dan. And if he did not play that Dread Infernal on the turn that he did, it would have just been stranded in the hand right now, and this Gul'dan would not bring back an extra 6/6, which could be game-changing for this.
Right. I think it was really great for A8 to spot that on the turn he did play it. Maybe it did telegraph to Orange that Gul'dan was coming, but how often can you play around a Gul'dan on 10? Most of the time, your best play would be the same as around Gul'dan anyway.
Ooh, this is a tough spot. I like playing the Vulgar Homunculus Stolen because you know it'll live through the Hellfire if your opponent has Gul'dan, and you'll be able to push both of these. I really think this Hooked Reaver has to come down. I think Orange is just debating whether or not he taps.
Yeah, 100%. I think you have the hard read on the Gul'dan, but aside from that, Orange also knows that A8 doesn't run shenanigans like Black Knight in his even lock. So it is going to be 4 demons, one of them being Taunt. So with the Hellfire in trade, isn't that just... Oh.
Yeah, it's just
with the
lethal
second
with the
Hellfire,
Death and
it's
Decay.
yeah. Wow. Okay, so there you go. I was thinking there might be 2 Homunculus, but it doesn't even matter, right? If you have Hellfire and the Death and Decay, that just does it. So Orange, coming back from quite a tilting last game to now tie up the series. And I think that really winning play of the Doomsayer going into the Hooked Reaver turns is what got him the whole advantage for the rest of the game.
Yeah, I think that play was just very good recognition from Orange's part. I really liked that play that he did. I think they're probably just going to take a minute. I think Orange is asking for a break right now because right now, I think he's a little antsy. I think he's, not playing on his full game, especially after that huge mistake in the Shutterwalk game. So, I don't blame him for asking for a break there. Just really wants to reset his mind, wants to make sure that he's going into the last game, especially when he has to play the Shutterwalk Shaman, the deck that he kind of blundered on a little bit earlier.
Yeah, there's nothing in the rules that says you can't take a break. The guy that we saw take this to an extreme, we both cast him at HCT Tokyo, was Alan. Alan Numbers.
Oh, that was great. That was phenomenal.
Yeah, he was just taking a bathroom break between every single game in the final set, was it? And with the BM towards the last match also. Of course, nothing close to that extreme is what Orange is doing right now, but any second he can take to maybe catch his breath and recompose himself would be invaluable. So yeah, I'm just going to wait for that to happen. Any highlights from the series so far, Dr. J?
I mean, I hate that we have to do Orange like this, and I hate constantly talking about it, but that one turn with Shutterwalk Shaman was just... You really can't be making mistakes like that this high of a level. It's absolutely crazy. Like, I love Orange to death. I think he's a phenomenal player, but I think just the nerves got to him there, and that could be the reason he may lose this set. Right now, he's still in it. He still has a fighting chance. But other than that, I think Tice defeating Hunter Race, something that, a lot of the fans in the chat right now really, really appreciate that, showing that, Tice was the OG. Tice was the original, just dominating the European scene, especially being back-to-back European champions, I believe, at one point.
Mm-hmm. And you were here casting the entire night so far. This is just my first set of the night, and it feels quite long already. I hope you still got the energy to cast this last game between Orange and A8. And then later on, we still have a match between RDU and Fury Hunter, and I suppose chat would be on the side of RDU because it is Tice's channel, and those guys are teammates.
You gotta root for fellow teammates. I was casting with RDU yesterday during the some of the games during, I believe it's Group C and D, or maybe Group A and B, just 2 of the groups there for the players, and it was a lot of fun. Really enjoyed hearing RDU's perspective on a lot of things. It's cool. It's not really the experience you get too often when you have just really high level professional players being able to cast alongside, just kind of giving their perspective. A lot of the times they're competing in these tournaments, so they can't really give you that perspective. So it's great to hear from RDU.
Yeah, very true. I did manage to catch maybe a few of the games last night, just in and out, and it's always cool to me whenever I listen to RDU trying to analyze a game, because I think he has higher words per minute speaking than any other player, let alone caster, in Hearthstone. And so just the amount of knowledge he can spit out in the short time that we're given is just phenomenal. So it's pretty good to see that he'll be on stream again later. But Orange is back now, and we're going to go into the final game. A8's even lock on the second try, and Orange's Shutterwalk, which, if anyone who's just joining us now doesn't know, it was a bit of a struggle for Orange a while ago. So how are you feeling about this matchup, Jace?
Yeah, I'm feeling as if it's pretty strong for both sides, depending on how the tech choices go, if the Shutterwalk Shaman is playing the copies of Earthshock, at least 1 to 2, it's going to mean that the Shaman's going to have, just a higher percentage in that matchup because it will have a very, very clean answer to Twilight Drake while saving the hexes for the Mountain Giants. Whereas, if that's neglecting and the even Warlock is playing cards like Bone Mare that can allow mid-sized minions to keep pushing threats through, that's also very beneficial. So it's definitely going to be, a battle of, how the draws pan out. And bear in mind, no slip-ups is going to come down to those tech choices.
Yeah, 100%. And as you mentioned, there is the one of Earthshock for A8. So I guess the 1-for-1 card matching up, Orange will have that one Twilight Drake that maybe survives. Because, as you said, Earthshocks for Twilight Drakes and Hexes for the Mountain Giants. But, of course, we can't count out things like Volcano, it's a stall. But I would say that this is one of the matchups where it's rare for the Shutterwalk to be able to get away with an aggressive start like with Kelaseth, as we saw Orange do previously.
Yeah, and you see A8 there, keep the Twilight Drake. I don't blame them. You can't really respect the Earthshock that much. It's more likely that they mulligan it away to try and find Hex for the Giant. Even has access to that Skulking Geist. If A8 wants to do so, he can play it in a way that he doesn't even need to commit the Twilight Drake before getting rid of the Earthshock. I mean, it's very difficult to play that way because you really want to keep the pressure on. But I think at this stage of the game, playing out a Hooked Reaver just as a 4/4 just might be good enough.
Yeah, it is one of those matches where if you don't have the threats on every single turn, then it's kind of difficult to actually pressure the Shutterwalk Shaman enough before they get their full combo. And as even lock, you can't be too greedy sometimes. You're playing a very streamlined deck, and sometimes the mana just doesn't line up for you to be able to play anything better than a 4/4 like the Shroom Brewer or the Hooked Reaver. It's more important to have the consistent pressure.
So here's a difficult turn for A8. He can opt to just try and put some kind of pressure on with the Sunfear Protector. That seems like a very weak play. He definitely wants to keep the pressure up as quickly as possible. And there's two lines of play here, just maybe coining out the Twilight Drake or the Hooked Reaver. I think you want to take that risk of them not having the one of Earthshock. It is a one of for that matter, so I don't think A8's too worried about it, and he also knows that Orange would not have kept it in the mulligan, so I really like this from A8. Just going to go ahead and play out that minion, has the Hellfire to get through a Serenite Chain Gang or potentially some more Mana Tides. Very strong play from A8.
Yeah, and this will be an especially strong Hellfire, as you mentioned. Maybe sometimes a newer player would get kind of panicked at the sight of a Mana Tide Totem and immediately want to respect it, but A8 realizes that the onus is on him to be the aggressor. It's more important that he puts out his threat, and later on he could get a better Hellfire, so that setup worked quite well for him. Orange does have this Earthshock available, though.
Yeah, it does find that one of Earthshock. The reason Earthshock is in this list is for this particular matchup here. It is the Twilight Drake killer. It is also fairly decent against other matchups, but mostly just the fact that even Warlock has become more popular recently, and Earthshock allows them to have a 1-mana kill a 4/10, which is absolutely absurd.
Yeah, a lot of the time when I was playing Hearthstone the first time and I read the card text on Earthshock, I was like, was this card specifically designed to deal with Twilight Drake? Just the way that it's worded. Silence it and then deal 1 damage. What card? I guess it can deal with things like Argent Squires, but the way that it punishes Twilight Drake is just so insane. But anyway, we saw A8, as we mentioned, go for just the Hooked Reaver as a 4/4. It feels bad, but you cannot afford to be wasting the time just playing a Spellstone to deal with the Mana Tide Totem. He needs to put on pressure.
Yeah, I think pressure is the most important thing in this matchup. Just keep piling it on. And although the Hooked Reaver's frozen, this Mossy Horror is pretty strong here. I mean, it is cleaning up the majority of the board. I don't think there's any way you don't commit to it. Mossy Horror is the best card ever created.
Is it really? Okay.
I said earlier on stream it's better than the 2 of Spades.
Well, I can see that you're somebody who very much hates Spreading Plague, and I cannot blame you for that at all.
That's why I love Mossy Horrors, because it's just that one card answer.
Absolutely. Ward Ripper doesn't quite get the entire job done, but Mossy, that guy is just such a lovable big green blob that deals with scarabs. Anyway, it is just going to be that Grumble for orange. Not going to bounce anything of value, but it is just a big threat on board and gets him one piece closer to the full combo. It can clear it with Spellstone and then a trade with either of the minions if you want. But honestly, I'd rather, if I were 8, I would favor just putting down more pressure and then going face. You're not too worried about the Grumble going face, I think, with Spellstone in hand this early, but 8 disagrees.
Yeah, I think although going face was very tempting that turn, I do think you have to respect it quite a little bit, because not only can it, just be put back into the hand with something, but Healing Rain's a pretty massive punish. It also gives orange 7 damage, and, sometimes you can just get burnt out of the game by the Shutterwalk Shaman. So I think respecting it was, a fairly strong play overall, but then again, I can see that Zola's in the hand, and it could have turned out poorly if you did not respect it.
All right, so A8 has access to either Lich King or Bone Mare here. Lich King will cause him to overdraw the next draw off the deck if he goes for it, so I can see Bone Mare is definitely fine here. Yes, it's weak to Volcano, but look how juicy this face damage is.
Yeah, that's the reason why Bone Mare is so powerful still in these even cost decks, is because, especially in this matchup, it just puts on the pressure and it keeps it up.
Yeah, and even Lich King there would have been weak to Volcano. A lot of the times as even lock, it's hard to play around that. Oftentimes, if you stick 2 mid-sized threats, they die to Volcano. And the most common board for even lock is 2 mid to large-sized threats. The only things that survive is like Giant plus Lich King or Giant or Giant Drake. And a lot of those cards have been answered already. So at some point, the Volcano is going to have to come out. It just sucked it up and hoped it wasn't there first. He does have decent refill with this Lich King, though.
Yeah, it does have that refill. Hex drawn off the top is going to give him a very clean answer for this Lich King. It's going to be, I wouldn't be surprised to see, Mind Control Tech come out here. Maybe even Zola, just to try and keep getting minions back into the hand. Just a, very tough call there. We see that not the most useful card gets picked up, but having that Hex is going to give him a very clean answer to this Lich King.
Yeah, this is a board that can't just get Death and Decay away. A8 will overdraw 1 card, although I don't fault him for playing Lich King because he already has that crucial Gul'dan. But the burn of the Twilight Drake does sting a little bit, especially since he saw Earth Shock already. I'm feeling like either of the 6 drops plus Death and Decay would maybe just be decent here.
It's hard to say. I believe in the pool right now for this Blood Reaver Gul'dan would be at least 1/6/6. I don't believe a Vulgar Monk is. Maybe it is just the 6/6. I definitely
Reaver too, right?
Oh, there's the Hooked Reaver. You are correct, because it was played as just a 1-drop. I like playing out the 6-drop here. I definitely think it presents more pressure. Well, now that Giant's drawn, I definitely think that's a bit higher on the pressure list.
Absolutely. It is hoping that there is no second Volcano, but Orange is definitely going to rip that off this turn. Ooh, Shutterwalk already is drawn. How many chain gangs have we seen this game?
I believe we have seen 2 chain gangs. I believe Grumble has been played. I know it's at least 1 chain gang. I'm not quite sure on the second one. I also believe, was Life Drinker played quite yet? I'm kind of drawing a blank on it, but I think what's going to happen is Orange is going to go ahead and play out Volcano just to clear up the board, maybe even commit to a Healing Rain or potentially Zola. I definitely think you want to try and get Zola into the pool as quickly as possible, but Orange looks like he wants to go for it.
Already?
I'm a little... I don't know about this one.
Even if there were 2 chain gangs played, this is a little sketchy. Okay, there are 2. It's still a 1 in 3, though, that you don't return a Shutterwalk to your hand, but I guess Orange was just thinking he didn't have the time. I see the argument because if you Volcano there, that's delaying your Shutterwalk by another turn. But you could also fit in the Zola that turn, and then guarantee that even if you don't bounce back a Shutterwalk, you can at least put another copy of it at full cost into your hand.
Well,
but maybe he's respecting the Gul'dan.
I'm just thinking if there's any way that, A could have punished this by getting lethal if the Glacial Shard had missed onto the Giant. That's what I'm curious about.
Double Hellfire? I can't remember if we've seen both, but yeah, I feel like it was quite risky for Orange there. So, okay, let's say in the other world he had gone for Volcano Zola or Volcano Healing Rain. 8 responds with most likely Gul'dan, and then Orange could possibly still double Lightning Storm that board away, right? Maybe it misses on the Dread Infernal. So I suppose Orange was scared of taking face damage from the Gul'dan minion.
I think he could have gone for Volcano Zola. Could have given the Zola the 2-mana card just to get out of the hand. The Ancestral Recall or Spirit, I'm not quite sure the name of that. Then next turn could just Hex one of the minions that gets brought out, and then Healing Rain. Obviously you can do these in like reverse orders, but you increase the odds of this Shudderwalk, not necessarily whiffing, yeah. But, I mean, maybe Orange felt as if, he doesn't have that time, so he wanted to go for it here. And he does get 6/3s onto the board if it does whiff, and he's already seen at least one of the Hellfires.
Yeah, because it didn't whiff, I do think Orange just has the game now. And also because A8 didn't have lethal, as you mentioned. Yeah, A8 is just going to go for... no life drinkers, right? So this isn't lethal yet for Orange, even if he plays both Shudderwalks.
No, I think if you're Orange here, you go for trading off 2 of the Shudderwalks, playing the Zola onto one of them just to get another one, and then Healing Raining. So I think you have to kind of fully trade here. There is still, you could commit Ancestral's Spirit onto one of the Shudderwalks just to get a 6/6 back in order to guarantee that your 1-mana Shudderwalk does get it back. So I think there is a very strong play here with, trading off, Ancestral Spiriting, Zolaing it to make sure that you have another one, getting the full life gain from the Healing Rain, and you're able to play Shudderwalks just to get some pressure on the board.
Yeah, I definitely like that. The only important thing, or at least the highest priority thing, is that Orange needs to have Healing Rain onto his face, maybe even if not for the full value, just to get him higher than 9 health, just because of the threat of Hellfires and hero power of Gul'dan. So doing it this way is still out of a threatening range, and he still gets to play a Shudderwalk and Zola. Or did he go for Ancestral Spirit there?
I believe he went for Ancestral Spirit onto the Shudderwalk that is left over, just to make sure it's on the board. I think Orange is fine in this position, but in the slim case that A can actually clear the board and eventually push through hero powers and let a minion stick, I don't think that is a world we live in. I just think maybe there could have been potential to take safer lines of play, but I'm not quite sure. I mean, maybe, going for it now would have been good.
Yeah. It's funny now that Orange is going for just infinite minions here, and knowing that A8 probably cannot afford to be hero powering the Shudderwalks away because they can be replenished nearly infinitely anyway. So I feel like he needs to try and race Orange's face now and try to push this hero power. He can Spellstone at least one of the Shudderwalks to delay for a little bit.
It's very tough to say. The reason I was thinking on the Zola the previous turn is just because you really want to make sure that you constantly have access to Shudderwalk. I think Orange is probably holding on to the Zola to make sure that he never gets 9-mana Shudderwalks back because he doesn't feel like he can afford to. So I kind of don't blame him for not playing onto the Zola, because if you get the Shudderwalks back, you can eventually just, replay them and get the Zola down later.
Okay, so... yeah, I'm not exactly sure what A8 is waiting for now, because this Spellbreaker is just going to get cleared by the Hagathas off of the shard. And, well, there's Life Drinker anyway, so now the combo can go infinite. Of course, Orange is just going to clear some hand space, as was the fatal problem for him in the previous game. So I do believe that this is just game now. Not this turn, the next.
With that play right there, with the Grumble bouncing, I do believe it is. But there was a potential for it to, whiff a couple times. If you were to, Hagatha first before getting the Serenite, he could actually theoretically whiff all of these Shutterwalks.
Sure. In a very, very unlucky world. But, Orange knew that he still had like a couple extra ones in hand, even if that first one didn't go off. But there you go, Orange, after kind of a blunder in that one game. Sorry to keep bringing it up, but he did manage to find the win with this Shutterwalk game and takes the series 3-2 versus A8 3650.
Yeah, that was a very close series. I'm glad Orange could compose himself after what had happened earlier on in the series, and it does look like, he played to his outs in the next couple of games. I do think maybe there were some, questionable turns on some of the games, but, it's very hard to say because we can obviously see both hands, and we know, how these hands would pan out if different plays were made, but Orange obviously probably has something on his mind when he wants to go ahead and commit to that Shutterwalk that turn just to try and increase the chance of him, bouncing it back and getting it back as quickly as possible.
Yeah. Even in that very last game, right, we thought that maybe the Shutterwalk could have been a bit delayed after he had played Zola and just go for Volcano first, but it did end up working out. To be fair, 2 times out of 3, it definitely would. So, well, there you have it, A8 with a bit of a sad, melancholy smirk from him. I don't know how else to describe it, but he is not out of the tournament yet. This is a double elimination essentially in the group. So A8 will be facing the winner of the Chinese versus Chinese players tomorrow, which will be decided later on.
Yeah, currently so far we have, if I remember correctly, Kalento, Orange, and Tice all in that top 8 bracket for the single elimination at a chance at that Aston Martin final grand prize. Last game of the day is going to be RDU versus Fury Hunter, which should be a pretty good one because I'm really excited to see how Fury Hunter plays. I've been told, he's one to look out for. He's on the up and come up and has been playing pretty well recently, especially with his success in previous tournaments.
Yeah, absolutely. He did win DreamHack Summer, was it? And at that time, he was known for piloting Odd Warrior, but in his interview on the first day, he said that it's just not good in the Conquest meta right now, so he hasn't brought it. But maybe he retains the spirit of a control player anyway. And RDU's lineup is pretty smork, so we have yet to see if Fury Hunter can manage it. So just a recap of the group today. In Group C, we saw that A8 3650 on day 1 was able to beat Lion King 3-2, and Orange beating Darren F with the same score, and then beating A8 himself today.
Might as well call it Group 5 at that point, because all the games went to Game 5.
Yes.
It's actually crazy. I wouldn't be surprised to see if Lion King versus Darren goes to Game 5, and if, A8, when he plays his game later on in the weekend, it will go to Game 5 as well. A lot of these series have gone to Game 5. Actually, don't remember the last time I casted one of these games that it did not go to Game 5.
Right? Yeah, on day 1, I also cast the 4 series, and they all went to Game 5. I think day 2, maybe Bunny Hoppers went 3-1. I saw a tweet of his. So
I believe there were 2 games day 1 that went 3-1. I believe Hunter Ace also went 3-1, but I can't remember off the top of my head. But if not, all of them have, for the most part, been either reverse sweeps or Game 5s.
Right, and I hope people are aware of that because I've been seeing some memeing about, China going 0-8 on the first 2 days, and they did in match score, in set score, but if you look at the individual sets, they came right down to the wire. But we have an interview with Orange coming right up, so have a listen, guys.
好，那我们首先要恭喜到橘子跟 Orange 是获得到这场比赛胜利。那我们 say hi。
Hello, I'm Orange.
OK， 好，那我们看到这个 Orange 来到中国，想问一下他来到中国多久了？这次的行程，然后对上海的感觉怎么样呢？
So how long have you guys been here for, and do you like Shanghai?
Now it feels like we've been here forever, but I think we've been here for 5 or 6 days now. I've been in Shanghai many times before, and I always think it's really pleasant to come here. I've really been enjoying it so far. Like this venue is like really nice. The hotel we're staying at is nice, and the city and the people. I'm enjoying it so far.
他说这趟酒店啊，人啊都非常好。他已经来上海很多次，每次都有个非常好的印象。这次感觉已经来了很久了。
好，那我们都知道今天这个他的欧洲队员是想要去在晚上尝试小龙虾这样的一个美食。那我想问一下他有没有吃过，愿不愿意去尝试？
I heard you guys were gonna try some crayfish tonight. Have you ever had any crayfish, and are you excited?
That was more than what I knew. I had no idea we were doing that, but yeah, that sounds cool. I've never had it before, so that sounds like a fun plan for tonight.
他说，他还是刚刚第一次知道，他还没有吃过小龙虾过，然后觉得非常期待。
好，我们也是相信他今天晚上能有一个非常好的这个美食之旅啊。那最后一个问题就是关于他的卡组。那我们看到第一局的兰隆德，他带了一张这个泰拉图斯，是打出了非常高的伤害。那我想问一下，他为什么会选择在这套卡组里面带这样的一张卡牌呢？
Alright, so Tyrantus was doing work in some of these games. What made you guys decide to bring it?
We both like Mallet Druid a lot, but Mallet Druid has a bit of a problem against other Druid decks. Like it's unfavorable versus a Togwaggle Druid, and we also wanted an additional win con in like the mirror, as well as it's actually surprisingly good against Evenlock. So mostly we just put it in there because we wanted an extra win condition, and we thought there would be a lot of slow decks in the tournament.
他说泰兰图斯是马里德的一个更加又是一个马里勾斯德的赢点，所以呢，他觉得打什么偶数数啊，打什么沙斗克啊，打内战啊，都会有很大的帮助。
好的，那我们非常感谢今天 Orange 带给大家的分享，也希望他今天晚上能有一个非常好的体验。好的，那我们这一时段的赛后采访到这里已经是全部结束了，马上来期待到今天的最后一场比赛。
All right, everybody, you just witnessed the set between AA3650 and Orange, where Orange managed to take it 3 games to 2, and now he will be moving on to the top 8 in a couple days. AA still has a chance to make it through his bracket, but he will have to face one of the players from the Chinese region in the next 2 days. So for the last match of the day, we will be having RDU and Fury Hunter, so don't go anywhere, guys. This is just going to be a quick break. See you later.
10多年了，谁说青春不能重来？我们一直都在。
很欣慰暴雪还在坚持的更新这么一款经典的游戏。
自从有了官方对战平台以后，玩家的数量或者说魔兽的口碑也一步步在增长。
我主要是喜欢魔兽争霸的编辑器的一些功能，可以去做一些炫酷的特效，就像我们创造一个世界一样，拥有自己的那种成就感。
投入地图是需要花费大量的时间，一个技能甚至可能会做上就是几小时。
官方平台也有去号召玩家说，把地图质量做好的前提下，是可以通过伤痕增加你一定额外收入的。在未来，把魔兽作为一个职业是完全有可能的。
每一次作者上能良好的促进平时见不着面的作者在线下来一次交流，分享自己的经验。
我把地图做好的前提下，魔兽的发展可以带给作者更多的收获，带给玩家更多的快乐。
网易和暴雪在这面达成了非常一致的共识，不断优化我们的产品，让每位地图开发者能真正开发出更加优秀的游戏，把我们的整个产品平台带向一个更广阔的未来和空间。
生生不息的仇恨，一再破裂的盟约。我们为分享这世界付出了太多，已经忘了是什么让我们变得强大。
密集队形，整体推进。洛丹伦是我们的，陛下，他已经走投无路了。
继续开火！
必须团结一致，为了联盟。
Hello, my name is Ardio and I play for G2 Esports. Last year, when I came in the tournament, I don't think I had the best decks, but this year I'm way more well prepared and I'm looking forward to crush my group and then do my best in top 8 to try to win the tournament. I don't think many things changed other than the meta game, and I just feel like I understand this meta game very well, so no matter who I play against, I'm very confident that I will win. Winning this would be like one of the most important things that I did in my entire life, and probably the most important thing I did in my Hearthstone career, and it would be like an honor and like an accomplishment that I cannot really put in words to win this tournament. I brought Tempo Mage, Odd Rogue, Zoo Warlock, and Malygos Druid, mostly to counter Quest Rogues, but just having a good overall lineup that can just beat everything and not have a situation where I'm deeply unfavored, where I can have situations where I'm very favored. Me and Thais practiced together, and with the help of Nyria, we just like try to predict what the opponents are going to bring. But it was mostly like also me bringing this lineup very similar decks to the playoffs, and feeling that the decks were good, but I just was quite unlucky, and I felt like it was just the best lineup in this current meta game. And I feel the meta is pretty stable, but it didn't change much from the previous meta game, and I do not know if it's going to change in the future that much, at least on ladder. Maybe tournaments are going to adapt to a specific strategy. For example, if people start playing more Quest Rogue, then people are going to start playing more of what me and Thais are bringing to counter that, and then the meta can evolve. But I don't think that many new decks can come up until some nerfs or buffs or new cards happen. For ladder, I just deck build based on what I faced in the last hours, and I just know all the playable decks within my head, and depending on what I'm facing or what my opponents tend to play in that particular hour, I'm just switching around decks until I find something that works. I'm very happy to be considered a very good Zoo player, and I think Zoo is probably the weakest deck in my lineup, so hopefully it doesn't betray me. Don't copy me!
All right, welcome back. We are here with EU versus CN Gold Series. We are on our last match of the day. It is going to be the man you just heard from, RDU, versus Fury Hunter, the newer face of Hearthstone. I am joined by Gia. Gia, what have you thought about the game so far today?
Hey, sorry about that. Just had a little bit of a bathroom break there, but I think I made it just back on time. I'm feeling pretty great. It's been quite a long day, but of course, I've not been here working as long as you tonight. You might be a little bit tired since all the series have been going to 3-2, huh?
It's all right. I'm not that worried about it. It is. I've been up since 5 a.m. on the East Coast covering this, and it is now 11 a.m. But I'm not worried about that. What I'm worried about is seeing more Hearthstone action. And I am very excited for this last game because I got to talk with RDU yesterday, and he's feeling fairly confident. And then I'm really excited to see how Fury Hunter plays, because Fury Hunter is one of those players that I've been told a lot about, and I've been told how strong he is, but I don't have any like personal firsthand of watching him compete.
Yeah, I really don't know too much about Fury Hunter aside from his run at DreamHack, but based on his play on day one, I gotta say he was looking very solid, and the only questions I had about overall the lineup and the gameplay was just the build of his Taunt Druid, which it's quite anti-aggro. It's got the 1 Wrath, 1 Tar Creeper, but also only 1 Dragon Hatcher and Sleepy Dragon, and 1 Ultimate Infestation. But if there's any lineup that this different build of Taunt Druid was made to beat, it's probably RDU's.
Yeah, it's much more anti-aggro than the typical lists of Taunt Druid that you would see. It seems like Fury Hunter with his lineup bringing the Shutterwalk Shaman, the Taunt Druid, Quest Rogue, and even Warlock was trying to hedge his bets against the field and wanted to bring something, you know, best deck lineup while also just making sure that the tech choices kind of mean that the aggro decks don't really slide through that well. So I do like Fury Hunter's lineup, but it's going to, you know, sometimes it's weaker overall in power level when you do hedge your bets like that.
Yeah, it did come back to bite him a little bit in one of the games on day one. I can't quite remember, but just having the Tar Creeper in the pool and having to only draw 1 Dragon Hatcher before Master O card becomes bad is quite a detriment. But anyway, here's a little bit more about Fury Hunter.
A dark horse successfully by his original odd defense. From top 16 in 2018 HCT in Oslo to the champion of 2018 HCT DreamHack Summer Championship, the leap gave him unlimited possibilities. A dark horse is ready to show. The peak of his career is on the horizon.
I am Fury Hunter. Witness my miracle.
Witness his miracle indeed. I think we're going to witness it here. He does seem very confident, and I like to see that from, some of these, not necessarily newer players, but some of the, less established players, especially going up against someone as large as RDU.
Large, absolutely. RDU has got a large name in the scene. And Fury Hunter, it was mentioned in that little intro video that he's known for his odd defense. I guess that got somehow lost in translation, but that is an odd warrior, which you might as well call it a defense deck because that's all it does, right? Tank up and tank up. But that was his kind of crowning achievement in DreamHack, and that did catapult the deck into greater heights of popularity, but not for this tournament in particular, where Odd Warrior, most people say it's not quite good in Conquest at the moment, and Fury Hunter himself knows it. But maybe it would have been kind of good against this particular lineup from RDU.
Yeah, Odd Warrior would have been very strong against RDU's lineup, but, when the person who is the pioneer of the deck is, basically the inventor of it and is just, probably one of the highest level players on the deck, decides that the deck is not good enough to be brought in tournament format, that's how you know you're really struggling. And it looks like RDU is actually going to respect this Taunt Druid with a ban. I would say that maybe the ban was a toss-up between that Druid and the even Warlock, but it appears as if RDU feels that, he's got a fairly decent matchup overall, especially having the Rogue and knowing that Fury Hunter will be forced to ban out the Mage.
Right, and this Tempo Mage, which RDU, Tice, and I believe one other player from the Chinese side brought it. I can't quite remember who, but the Mages have been garnering so many respect bans throughout the tournament, and that's pretty astounding to me because Mage is one of those decks where players, I think as recent as the playoffs, people were saying that it's just not good enough, not consistent enough to bring to a Conquest format, but these guys had the read that Quest Rogue would be abundant in the tournament, and now the Mage is getting all those respect bans.
Yeah, not only Quest Rogue, but also even Warlock. It is a very strong deck against that even Warlock, as it does have to basically tap itself to death. So definitely a great call from these players. I'm not a huge fan of the Tempo Mage myself, but I can see where it has been putting in tons and tons of work. And we're going to not see it here, which is a little unfortunate. I would like to see some Tempo Mage action, but, it got the ban for a reason. It did its job.
Absolutely. And on day one, RDU did manage to win his set versus Tsai Miao, I believe, by sweeping his Quest Rogue with all three of the remaining decks from RDU. His Mage was also banned at the time. And I was casting with Neria at the time, and I was thinking, how does this Malygos Druid consistently beat Quest Rogue? And he's like, actually, it's pretty good, especially with Florist. So we may just see that matchup again today. But for now, it is going to be the even lock versus Zoo.
Yeah, this is one of those matchups that I kind of worry for the Zoo Warlock. We did see earlier where the Zoo Warlock just kind of took it by storm and ended up crushing the even Warlock, but I'm not sure if that's necessarily going to be the case here. However, Soul Infusion onto a Doubling Imp, since it will be the leftmost minion after that Flame Imp gets played, is a very powerful start to the game.
Absolutely. RDU is, I've been seeing him keep Soul Infusion in Zoo pretty often, and it seems like the stats work out in his favor. I've always just been questioning whether it's right to keep cards like Soul Infusion and Happy Ghoul, which hinge on other cards to make them good, but in this situation, it's so strong, it's going to make those 4/4s which can survive Hellfire.
I think it's also a case where even Warlock, you kind of need not necessarily a wider board state, but a taller board state, and Soul Infusion does give you access to that, as even if it buffs up something like a Flame Imp or something like a Voidwalker, that is much better than, just having, say, potentially two smaller minions that just die to a Hellfire.
That's right. And now Fury Hunter is already debating on how greedy he can get with this Doomsayer. And the Doomsayer is a one-of in the list for Fury Hunter, although it's not to say that the list is greedy. He also has the Plated Beetle and things like that. And he's just going to play it down right now. On paper, it's not likely that on turn 2, Zoo would be able to put out enough stats to deal with Doomsayer. It would take like another Flame Imp and Minion or something like a Happy Ghoul board. But I think also with the threat of Soulfire and the fact that Fury Hunter has follow-up at least next turn with a 2-drop into Twilight Drake, I like the Doomsayer on this turn.
Yeah, I really like the Doomsayer. Really need to prevent minions from coming down as quickly as possible, especially because it gives you a turn to develop your own minion. Could play out either the Acidic Swamp Ooze or the Sun Fury Protector, now that both are in the hand. Radu is not going to go ahead and commit the Soulfire there. No real reason to. Protecting the Flame Imp isn't the #1 priority, especially when you have such a strong follow-up as that Doubling Imp, and you will be able to coin out the Doomguard on the following turn.
Yeah, absolutely. No point in risking the discard of the Doubling Imp here. It's really strong follow-up for whatever Fury Hunter puts down on turn 2. They can be just eaten up by these 4/4s. And Fury Hunter will be pretty upset to see this, I'm sure, because yes, he does get to put down a Twilight Drake that challenges it, but not before he takes possibly 8 face damage.
Yeah, 8 is quite a lot to take here. There's no other real strong play to contest this. The Hellfire typically, would be a great answer to a wide board state, but like I said, keeping that Soul Infusion is paying off in spades for RDU. He's able to create 2 minions that just are very, very sticky to that Hellfire. I do think Twilight Drake is a pretty strong play overall, though, so I don't think Fury Hunter's too upset. He can take the 8, maybe even play a Hooked Reaver on the following turn.
That's right. Hooked Reaver is the one saving grace against Zoo that Fury Hunter might have when Hellfire isn't enough. I would say there's maybe consideration for going for something like 2/2 drops to maybe try and soak up hits from these Doubling Imps and go for Hellfire. But that would be very weak to something like Coin Fungalmancer. So Fury Hunter is instead just going to respect something like that and put down the Twilight Drake.
Yeah, Coin Fungalmancer would have almost been a game ending at this point. Sure, you would have gotten 2 trades, but just the fact that you'd be forced to Hellfire next turn while taking 12 damage is, and sacrificing the Twilight Drake you had to play. I think Fury Hunter is really hoping that there's no Fungalmancer here.